Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side, and the one institution that has stood by our side is the courts. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
The second one is that he's creating a false moral equivalent by saying, if you, South Africa, charge Israel with genocide in the International Court of Justice, I'm charging you with genocide of white Afrikaners. If you, South Africa, charge Israel with occupying Palestinian lands in the West Bank and Gaza, then I am charging you with confiscating white lands. That is not only a false moral equivalent, it is fundamentally founded on an absolute blue lie.
Welcome to the Joy Reid Show. We've got a big interview that I suspect the regime will not enjoy. Please, someone do a wellness check on Marco Rubio. Thank you. Well, when former South African ambassador to the U.S., Ebrahim Rasool, was expelled from the U.S. in March of this year and declared persona non grata by the Trump regime, it was a linchpin moment in a bilateral relationship that had already been battered by Trump's executive order a month earlier that cut off all foreign aid to South Africa and called for white South African descendants of Dutch colonizers, known as Afrikaners, to be treated as refugees from a supposed white genocide and allowed to quickly relocate to the United States. While the administration bans pretty much every other actual refugee from war-torn and impoverished places from coming to the U.S., and while violently removing many others. The February 7 order was entitled Addressing Egregious Actions of the Republic of South Africa. It focused on a 2024 South African law called Expropriation Act 13, which allows, under certain circumstances, for the return of land to indigenous South Africans. Now, I should note that no land has actually been expropriated under that law, but it has fed a right-wing conspiracy theory popular on the American right that South Africa is engaging in a white genocide, taking white South Africans and particularly Afrikaners' farms and homes and then killing them. The Trump executive order reads, quote, in shocking disregard of its citizens' rights, the Republic of South Africa recently enacted Expropriation Act 13 of 2024 to enable the government of South Africa to seize ethnic minority Afrikaners' agricultural property without compensation. This act follows countless government policies designed to dismantle equal opportunity in employment, education, and business, and hateful rhetoric and government actions fueling disproportionate violence against racially disfavored landowners. Wait, hold up. So Trump does favor equal opportunity, aka diversity, equity, and inclusion in education, business, and employment, but only for white people in South Africa and per his other executive orders and policies for white people here in America? And sorry, how are white South Africans racially disfavored when, despite being 7% of the population, they own more than 70% of the land? And to be clear, they own all of that land because their forefathers came to South Africa, colonized it, and drove indigenous Africans off of their land, forcing them to become slaves and then tenant farmers living in shanty towns. And they did this for more than 300 years. But Afrikaners are the disfavored group? You know what? Let's keep reading from the executive order, shall we? And I quote, in addition, South Africa has taken aggressive positions towards the United States and its allies, including accusing Israel, not Hamas, of genocide in the International Court of Justice and reinvigorating its relations with Iran to develop commercial, military, and nuclear arrangements. Okay, let's pause again, because it is true that South Africa, in December of last year, filed a formal case to the International Court of Justice at The Hague, charging Israel with violating the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. And in February, South Africa accused Israel of engaging in apartheid for the treatment of Palestinians in the West Bank who were being dispossessed of their land by religious extremist Jewish settlers, often with the Israeli Defense Forces looking the other way. There was a public trial at the International Court of Justice in early January, at which both the South African-led delegation, that also included barristers from Ireland, and an Israeli delegation made their cases. And there was a provisional ruling on January 26th, 6 days after Donald Trump was sworn in as president again, in which the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to take steps to prevent acts of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, and also calling on that country to enable the provision of basic services like food and fuel and humanitarian assistance, and to prevent and punish incitement to commit genocide. Now, I will note that according to Human Rights Watch, Israel is not complying with those binding ICJ orders and continues to deny Palestinians in Gaza access to fuel and food, while continuing to bomb schools and hospitals and private homes, and more than 50,000 men, women, and children have been killed, many with U.S.-supplied bombs. That is what South Africa objects to. But instead of addressing that, the Trump regime is, just checking my notes here, punishing South Africa for taking a case against a third-party nation that is not part of the United States to the international body that the United States helped to design to hear such cases and enforce international law and norms. Okay, got it. On Iran, last time I checked, the Trump regime is also talking to Iran about perhaps doing a nuclear deal to replace the one that Trump didn't like because the black president was behind it. But okay, let's just keep reading from the executive order. Quote, the United States cannot support the government of South Africa's commission of rights violations in its country or its undermining United States foreign policy, which poses national security threats to our nation, our allies, our African partners, and our interests. Rights and violations, you say? And our African partners, you say? Would that be the countries like South Sudan and Rwanda that are considering maybe taking money to allow the Trump regime to ship migrants to their prisons without trials? You know, the way El Salvador has those kind of African partners. Well, this past month, Trump made good on his promises to resettle white Afrikaners, as just under 60 of them arrived on a U.S. government plane at Dulles Airport, where they were greeted by Christopher Landau, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State, and a whole lot of balloons, and personally welcomed to their new home. Left unanswered is, who are these supposed refugees from white genocide? And if they are indeed farmers, did they abandon their farms to move here? In which case, how does moving them here save their farms from expropriation? Because if they're here, and stop me if you've heard this before, they can't also be on their farms in South Africa preserving their precious property. Now, we do know the identity of at least one of these supposed refugees, 46-year-old Charles Kleinhaus, who, per the BBC, left his family farm in Mpumalanga province, South Africa, with its scenic beauty, wildlife, and deep canyons, for a budget hotel near an American highway. The BBC goes on to report that Mr. Kleinhaus left behind his 5-bedroom house, which he says he will now lose, along with his car, his dogs, and even his mother.
I had to leave a 5-bedroom house, which I will lose now because I'm not going to pay for it, behind, my car behind, my dogs behind, my mother behind. It is not, I didn't come here for fun, but my children are safe.
I mean, if you fear for your life and your family, who leaves their mother behind? Mr. Kleinhaus also had to delete some rather unsavory anti-Semitic social media posts on his way to American MAGA martyrdom. According to The Guardian, Charles Kleinhaus posted on X Twitter in 2023 that, quote, Jews are untrustworthy and a dangerous group. In another post last fall, he shared a right-wing nationalist YouTube video that was later removed titled, We'll Shoot Illegal Immigrants. Poland's illegal Islamic immigrant solution, with clapping emojis. A number of Kleinhaus's posts also promote the conspiracy theory that white people in South Africa are persecuted. Kleinhaus confirmed to several media outlets, including The Bulwark and the New York Times, that he was indeed the owner of the account that contained the anti-Semitic and racist posts. Though he insisted to the Times that he was not anti-Semitic and claimed to have written a post in error while on medication. Okay, well, what medication was that? Anyway, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, said last month it will begin screening immigrant social media activity for anti-Semitism, using it as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests. Kleinhaus, however, was recently granted refugee status by the U.S. government, along with 58 other white South Africans, and landed this week at Washington Dulles International Airport. Quote, "We just packed up our bags and left for safety reasons," Kleinhaus, who, according to his LinkedIn profile, owns a mining company in South Africa, told the New York Times on arrival. Afrikaners are a white ethnic minority that ruled South Africa during apartheid, implementing harsh policies of racial segregation in that country until the regime was officially abolished in 1994. Yeah, 1994. That's like yesterday. We here at the Joy Reid Show also did have a look-see at Mr. Kleinhaus's LinkedIn, which does indeed say he's the co-owner of Nespruit Mining Company. His LinkedIn also says he's the co-owner of the Honey Badger Mining Company. So, will he now be running those mining companies from the budget hotel? And is he a farmer and a mine operator? Inquiring minds want to know. More importantly, it is worth asking why Donald Trump and his friends in right-wing media are so keen on pushing this myth that there is a white genocide going on in South Africa, or that white people in South Africa are subject to more violence than other groups. It's also worth asking because this whole white genocide myth is not just a benign and annoying online meme. It has resulted in real and deadly consequences. The white genocide conspiracy theory has mostly lived online and on Fox, but it's clearly also seeped into mainstream conservative and Republican politics. The notion of a great replacement plot against white Americans, where a supposed Jewish conspiracy is plotting to import masses of brown people, and especially Muslims, into the U.S. to displace white citizens and white voters, has become standard Republican fare. And this year's Afrikaner airlift isn't even Trump's first go-round. Back in August of 2018, first-time President Trump tweeted that he was instructing his then Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, aka Marco Rubio 1.0, to look into the South Africa land and farm seizures and expropriations and the large-scale killing of farmers. The Southern Poverty Law Center called that Twitter announcement a huge victory for South Africa's far right, which has been lobbying foreign governments intensively over the past year. So far, they have managed to find a few sympathetic legislators in Western countries, but Trump is the first head of state to make such overtures. I mean, of course, there's barely a racist conspiracy theory that this guy won't believe. The SPLC called Trump's then embrace of the South African white genocide myth, quote, troubling because it signifies the mainstreaming of white nationalist narratives about white genocide, of which South Africa's farm murders are an essential component. And the great Daniel Dale over at CNN crunched those numbers on supposed white genocide even further and came to the following conclusion. Quote, the most recent South African official data shows that the country had 19,696 murders from April 2024 through December 2024, and that the victim in just 36 of these murders, 36, that's 0.2%, was linked to farms or smaller agricultural holdings. Further, only 7 of the 36 victims were farmers. South Africa has black farmers too. The official data is not broken down by race. The other 29 victims included farm employees, who tend to be black. Data from groups representing South African farmers also shows that farm killings number in the dozens per year, a minuscule percentage of the country's total. Under the United Nations definition, genocide requires acts such as murder and serious bodily or mental harm committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, there is no evidence that South Africa, whose agriculture minister is white, has made or overseen such an effort. And to reiterate, the whole notion of a white genocide in South Africa has its origins in white nationalist propaganda, which apparently works brilliantly on Donald Trump. The question is why Trump and why so many U.S. conservatives are so eager to get on the white genocide bandwagon. I mean, is it just the influence of all the billionaire white South Africans who hang around Trump and Republicans? I don't know. Elon Musk only started being a functional Republican last year, though Peter Thiel has been at it longer. What seems logical in finding the answer is that you have to look back at the rationale for why the former South African ambassador Abraham Rasool was dismissed in the first place. Here's the way The Guardian reported it. Quote, the U.S. is expelling South Africa's ambassador to Washington, with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, accusing the envoy of hating the U.S. and Donald Trump. Rubio accused Ambassador Abraham Rasool of being a race-baiting politician who hates America and hates POTUS, referring to Trump by his White House X account handle. We have nothing to discuss with him, and so he is considered persona non grata. Neither Rubio nor the State Department gave an immediate explanation for the decision. However, Rubio linked to a Breitbart story about a talk Rasool had given on Friday as part of a South African think tank's webinar in which he spoke about actions taken by the Trump administration in the context of a U.S. where white people would soon no longer be a majority. Rasool pointed to Elon Musk's outreach to far-right figures in Europe, calling it a dog whistle in a global movement to try to rally people to see themselves as part of an embattled white community. He must leave by 21 March, a State Department spokesperson said. The article noted that Rasool is a former anti-apartheid campaigner who served time in prison for his activism and went on to become a politician in the African National Congress, the party of Nelson Mandela, the country's first post-apartheid president, and someone Rasool worked closely with, as did Cyril Ramaphosa. And while he isn't a black African, Rasool's forebears were brought to South Africa by European colonizers as slaves. And the anti-apartheid movement was multiracial, much like our own civil rights movement, and Black Lives Matter. And like those movements, it was also deeply hated by the American and the European right. In the U.S., from Ronald Reagan on down back in the day, because it ultimately challenged the idea that the descendants of those who colonized indigenous people have an automatic and permanent entitlement to the land and the power they inherited, and that people of color must never, ever, ever challenge that power or those stolen land holdings. The idea is deeply frightening to the conservative Afrikaners who already lost their ability to rule South Africa and who are now raising the alarm that black Africans might also want to have some land back. In other words, there is a particular sensitivity on the right, both in South Africa and here in the U.S., to any person of color, pointing out the existence or consequences of white supremacy anywhere. Ambassador Rasool crossed that red line, and the reaction from Trump world was immediate and predictable. And that same sensitivity among many on the far right, and even some on what used to be the regular normie right, to ever being confronted with not just the fact, but also the consequences of white supremacist history and policies, contains an inherent fear that the victims of that past oppression will seek deadly payback any minute, stripping the descendants of their former colonizers and enslavers of their property, their superior social status, and unlimited economic and educational opportunity, or maybe even their lives. The far right lives in constant fear that the people that they celebrate having conquered as a matter of supposedly superior Western civilization are just waiting for the chance to pay them back in kind. Maybe because that's what they would do. But the fact of the matter is, that is not what most people are looking to do at all. It's certainly not the position of the South African government, and the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has said that explicitly and said it to Donald Trump. And since most of the world operates under a capitalist global financial model, there is zero incentive for struggling countries to defy entities like the World Bank and risk being cut off by punishing minorities in their country, no matter what the history is. In the rare cases where formerly colonized people took violent revenge, they wound up isolated and punished by the global economic community. Think Zimbabwe, where Robert Mugabe led the expulsion of many of the former white settlers, essentially at gunpoint, and wound up completely isolated by the West, with his country's economy destroyed. Or Haiti, which is still being punished for its successful violent revolution to oust Napoleon and the French enslavers. In fact, France made them pay reparations, just as American enslavers received reparations from the U.S. government under good old Abe Lincoln. The fact of the matter is, It is really hard for formerly colonized people and nations to get off the mat. And South Africa has actually been more conciliatory than one might have expected, given the suffering the vast majority of its people were subjected to over 3 centuries. Whatever.
Dive into the magical world of Edwina's Bedtime Adventures by Ariel Williams. Join Edwina, the little hippo with a big imagination, as she drifts off to sleep and embarks on whimsical bedtime journeys. Whether she's saving the day as a brave firefighter, caring for patients as a nurse at Sunny Valley Hospital, or exploring the wonders of the jungle, Edwina's heartwarming tales will capture the imagination of young readers and spark endless bedtime giggles. This is an electronic book. You'll need an EPUB reader or PDF reader to enjoy this whimsical tale. Get your copy today at lulubooks.com or follow the link tree in profile to get your copy and let the adventure begin.
Gas Station Diaries by Adam King is a compelling collection of fictional stories drawn from the author's experiences working at a gas station during the tumultuous year of 2020. Set in the unassuming locale of Rainbow Land, the narrative unfolds in a place where time seems to stand still, yet unexpected drama and human encounters abound. This is an electronic book. You must upload an EPUB reader or a PDF reader to enjoy this book. Get your copy today at lulubooks.com and let the story unfold.
The Baker and the Handyman's Sweet Connection. In a quaint village nestled in a picturesque valley, there stood a small house in the shape of a mushroom. This whimsical home belonged to a young boy named Jamie, barely out of high school, who had a passion for baking. Inside, his cozy kitchen was always filled with the sweet aroma of cakes, cookies, and all sorts of delightful treats. What made his creation special was that each of his cakes was shaped like tiny mushrooms, a nod to his quirky home. Jamie's baking became the talk of the town. From birthdays to celebrations, everyone in the village adored his sweets.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
Sable's Song, A Siren's Journey to Joy. Once upon a time, in a small, worn-out town in Middle America, there lived a little child named Sable. Born into poverty, Sable's body was frail, so thin that you could see her bones, but her heart was filled with an exuberance that not even hunger could dull. Sable was awkward, with dark, deep-set eyes that sparkled with innocence and wonder. Despite being born a boy, Sable always knew she was different. Inside her lived a girl, bright and effervescent, waiting to bloom.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
The Park of Secrets.
In the year 2060, near the heart of Florida, just a stone's throw from Disney World, stood a theme park unlike any other, a place known as the House of Secrets. It was a magical park, much like a state fair, filled with towering rides, carnival games, and parades that drew people from all over the world. But among the grand Ferris wheel and the colorful day parade, there was one attraction that outshined them all, the Parade Princess, a mesmerizing mermaid named Kenya. Kenya was a sight to behold. At 22 years old, fresh out of college, she had the kind of beauty that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Her brown skin glowed under the park lights, her hair a stunning mix of purple and pink that cascaded over her shoulders. Little pink hearts adorned her cheeks, and a ribbon of color stretched across her nose. But it wasn't just her beauty that made her special. Her eyes, big and almond-shaped, seemed to capture the hearts of everyone who saw.
Discover the magic of the Park of Secrets. Step into a world of wonder with the Park of Secrets, a heartwarming tale by Ariel Williams that will captivate your imagination. This enchanting story is now available exclusively on Lulu Books.
The Future, Daughters of Liberty, A New Dawn. In 2040, the United States was a fractured nation, still reeling from the fallout of Project 2025. the catastrophic policy that had allowed a resurgence of systemic oppression. The Deep South had seceded once more, forming the antebellum republic, where human trafficking, racial inequality, and gender oppression became tragically normalized. The Second Civil War erupted as the rest of the nation sought to free those trapped in this dystopian regime. After years of bloodshed, Kamala Harris had finally led the Union to victory, restoring a fragile sense of hope. But the battle scars ran deep, especially in places like Louisiana, where the remnants of a broken society still lingered.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
A Dying Planet, The Last Harvest.
In the year 2060, Earth is a shadow of its former self, choked by pollution, endless concrete, and abandoned by nature. Only a small fishing village by the sea has managed to preserve the planet's last untouched forest. In this dying world, June and Win, two young girls and the last children in their village, cling to the remnants of hope and innocence. Win roams the forest, collecting the season's last harvest, while June sings songs that echo with a haunting beauty through the village.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.